Today, we're going to be looking at some buy low wide receivers. We're going to open up the spreadsheet. We're going to be looking at those wide receivers who are getting a lot of work in air yards, but not scoring fantasy points over the last 3 weeks. Look at how they're scoring. Look at their targets and see how we can buy low on them due to the production versus workload. Obviously, if players are scoring a lot of fantasy points, you're not going to be able to buy low on them. The players you want to buy low on are wide receivers who are getting targets deep downfield, and getting a lot of volume in the passing game through running routes. We're going to look at all that today. And the thing is, we're now in week 3, so that gives us a nice sample of 3 games to look at to see any trends. And usually you want to go 3 to 4 weeks back. You don't want to go too far back because it skews the sample due to injuries and everything else. But you don't want to go too small either because you could just have some random games in there. But today we're looking at some wide receivers to buy low on for fantasy football. But before we do, you need to click that subscribe button because we're going hot and heavy on the waiver wire every day. We're using these videos to set your lineups, and we're using the metrics to help you find cheap players to buy. But our first wide receiver here, Courtland, Sutton. He's a big time buy low. He had a good week in week 3, 13.8 PPR fantasy points, but was still wide receiver 3 in production here. But what we like about him, we've been seeing this all along throughout the season. He's got a good target share, pushing 25%, pushing 90% route participation rate. He's got 114 routes on the season, 38 per game. So he's running a lot of sprints in those games where he's not scoring fantasy points or catching balls, but he's also getting a lot of targets. He has a game with 12 targets and another game with 11 targets. That's saying the volume's going to be there. He's averaging over 100 air yards per game. If you just look at the work rate, you don't look at him as a wide receiver 3 sensei right now, and you just look at those numbers, the targets, the air yards, the routes ran, you would say that's a top tier wide receiver. He is getting a top tier workload. If you can catch that for free, if you catch him on the cheap in a trade, that's something you may get to patch up your roster. I don't expect him to go nuclear due to Bo Nix, but I expect him to get this work rate. I expect him to have more games where he gets double-digit targets. I expect him to get deep balls downfield. I expect him to get a lot of volume, and that could lead to something down the line in the right matchups here. And he's a matchup play too, because if he's in a matchup where the defense is trending to allow fantasy points to wide receivers, yards to wide receivers, bend but don't break, then that could be a Courtland Sutton game. If it's a matchup where it's supposed to be low scoring, but it's the Broncos, they're all supposed to be low scoring. Even the Tampa Bay game was supposed to be lower scoring, but Bo Nix came out on fire, then it might be a bad game for Courtland Sutton. But if you're looking for a wide receiver on the cheap, dynasty, redraft, whatever, 25% target share, running on almost 90% of the routes, over 100 air yards per game, that's rather solid. Odunze hit last week, so he can't be a super buy low, but he's still a rookie. He's on the Bears. People are not into Caleb Williams. That is a narrative that can be sold here for when you're looking at him. And also Keenan Allen is going to come back eventually one day, shape or form, but he's also getting over 100 air yards per game. He's running on almost 95% of the routes. He's at least getting his cardio in game by game, so he's getting some opportunity. 16.5 average depth of target. So there's going to be some splash games here where the game script breaks like it did in week 3 where Caleb Williams has to throw the ball. There's going to be opportunities for him to blow up in fantasy points. It's just going to happen that way. And when the game script is tight, it's going to be a lot like week 1 and 2. It's going to be a lot like that. There were some opportunities in those weeks too where if he caught that screen pass or Caleb Williams hit him on that one play, he would have had some big yards. But we're also looking at 6.7 targets per game here. 20 targets on the season. 11 targets, most of them in week 3, but 5 and 4, weeks 2 and 1. We're also getting more work by the week, mostly due to Keenan Allen, but we're also earning our stripes here. We're a big-time rookie, top-tier first-round pick with good size-adjusted athleticism, good production score coming out of college. We could mount up here in the middle of the season, too. We're already getting a good work rate. We're already getting yards downfield. They're allowing him to run routes every game at a high clip. 42.7 routes per game. Getting a lot of that cardio in. And you want wide receivers who are at least getting cardio. Odunze is getting it. Jeudy. 41 routes per game, 12.2 average depth of target, 7 targets a game. There's a lot of volume here and not a lot of fancy points, but he is scoring enough to keep you intrigued. 12 points in week 2, 11 in week 1, wide receiver 3 weeks, and we're getting deep balls. We're getting volume here. Something's got to stick. We got 1 touchdown on the season. You're not going to average 7 targets a game and finish the year with 1 touchdown. You might with Watson there, but odds are you're getting that many targets a game. You're getting a 12.2 ADOT. You're getting 85 air yards a game. More than likely, you're not finishing the year with 1 touchdown in week 1. As long as you're healthy on the field and you're getting this work rate, things are going to mount up for you. And he's a buy low. He's super cheap right now. He's not super exciting, but the work rate is there. 41 routes per game. That is what the spreadsheet is saying. Calvin Ridley. Look at the ADOT, 23.3. That is elite. That is top tier. We're also getting 124 air yards per game. What does that say about Calvin Ridley? He's going to be a splash play machine. And what do I mean by splash plays? Just look at the chart below me. You see 1 green candlestick and 2 reds. It's going to look like that throughout the season. You're going to see a bunch of red and a few greens. He might have like 5, 6 wide receiver 1 weeks. He did that last year in Jacksonville. He had a bunch of wide receiver 1 weeks and a bunch of weeks where he's scoring like 8, 1, 5 PPR fantasy points. And it's either one or the other. You may hate that, but he's also coming off a game where he scored 1 point. Week 1, he scored 8. Week 2, he scored 24. We got Will Levis there slinging the rock. Things are off and on. We're running a lot of snaps here. We're running a lot of routes. We're running 32.7 routes per game. We're getting deep targets, 5.3 targets per game here. And that's dipped due to just 3 against the Packers. But weeks 2 and 1, 7 targets and 6 targets. So there's opportunity in this offense for Calvin Ridley to really step up here and give you some splash weeks off and on throughout the season. Terry McLaurin, he might be a sell high or it might be still a buy low. I don't feel like anybody's going to sell him on the low after Monday's performance. Everybody's rocking with him. Still wide receiver 2 in production. That's what that gray candlestick below me in the chart says with 20 PPR fantasy points. But the numbers were always there. Even prior to this game, he was getting a good target share. He was running a lot of routes. He gets a lot of deep balls. And what I say about deep balls is sometimes they connect and a lot of times they don't. But when they connect, it's beautiful like we saw on Monday night. He might be a player this year that's off and on in fantasy production. But we're getting 86 air yards per game. We're running on 90+% of the routes. We're over a 20% target share. You want those numbers with your wide receivers. The work rate's there and the right matchup that's going to hit. He's already proven that this week. You cannot buy low right now. And if you can, do it. But there's going to be more opportunities to buy low on Terry McLaurin. I like Daniels. He's a good rookie quarterback, but he's still a rookie quarterback. And wide receivers with this kind of hit rate, like we saw last year and this year, but he's getting a good ADOT. He's getting good work rate. You'll have buy low opportunities. You might not be able to right now, though. Amari Cooper, same thing, except for he's questionable, and Deshaun Watson's his quarterback. But we got an elite target share. We had good ADOT. We're getting over 124 air yards a game. We're getting workload. We're getting a lot of routes. We're running 44 routes a game. Jeudy plus. Jeudy plus here. Jeudy's getting a good ADOT. Amari Cooper's getting a good ADOT. They're getting the targets. Elijah Moore's getting work. But Amari Cooper here, when you look at the production from week 3, 27 PPR fantasy points, not surprised you're getting this work every week. He's getting deep targets. He's getting volume. Week 1, 9 targets. Week 2, 8 targets. Week 3, 12 targets. That's elite work rate. That's top tier. If you can catch him on the low, you may want to do it. On top of that, though, if you hate Watson, this might be a good sell high, except he's rolling into week 4 with that questionable tag, which might make him less liquid on the market. And our last player is Rashid Shaheed. He's the ultimate upside player, downside player, and like last year, we're getting air yards, 87.7 per game. Actually, that's kind of low for him. Usually he's rocking around 100 or more. 22.6 target share, which is solid. Good for him. He's getting more targets this year. 2 games of 5. Week 2, he got 4. He's running a lot of routes, 20 per game. Good ADOT, 18.8. 2 wide receiver 2 weeks. 20 PPR fantasy points in week 2. Something to look at there. Rashid Shaheed's getting volume, and it's going to be up and down. That's what we saw last 3 years. That is Rashid Shaheed. He's either getting you everything or nothing. That's what he is, and he averages a blow-up performance once every 4 to 5 games. Those are the numbers. That's what I would expect as long as he's healthy on the field for the rest of the season this year. Something like what we're seeing in this chart, because that's his history. Blow-up game, nothing, nothing, nothing. Blow-up game, nothing, nothing, nothing. That is Rashid Shaheed. You either love it or you hate it, but you can't go without it, because those are the players you pick up off waivers or get cheap and you plug in your lineup and you hope they hit. Because those games where he's scoring 6, 7 fantasy points, he's not far off from those wide receivers scoring 10, 11, 12. And in the rankings among wide receivers, that's really not much. That's not really going to hurt you that much. It might cause you to lose your matchup here and there, but overall, over the long term, that's really not much versus those other ho-hum waiver wire wide receivers. If he's sitting there, he shouldn't be. But those blow-off-top games there is what you're shooting for at the wide receiver position when you're getting a player like Rashid Shaheed and like many of these guys on today's list. We're going to continue to run the spreadsheets, look for buy lows at wide receiver, tight end, running back. So we'll have more videos out for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.